There are a lot of strange things in the world, and sometimes they can be found in the most unexpected places. These bizarre objects can be anything from ancient artifacts to puzzling scientific breakthroughs. In this video, I'll show you some of the most bizarre finds from around the world. From the nasty curse of stolen artifacts to crazy alien attacks, here are the 15 strangest objects recently discovered. Number 15. The stolen ballista stone. Do you believe ancient artifacts are imbued with curses to protect them? Well, you might believe it after hearing about the cursed ballista stone in Israel. In 2020, a stolen ballista stone was returned to the Israel Antiquities Authority. Along with the artifact was a letter that read, "These are the Roman ballista stones that I stole in 1995. Ever since obtaining them, they brought me nothing but trouble. Please don't steal any other artifacts." The latter part of the letter seemed to be a warning for people who plan on committing the same crime. The Roman ballista stones were displayed at the Jerusalem Walls National Park in the city of David. The stones were stolen by a group of teenagers sightseeing in the area in the early 2000s. The stones were used by the Romans in 70 AD as part of their plans to besiege Jerusalem during the First Jewish-Roman War, also known as the Great Jewish Revolt. A young boy in the group stole one of the ballista stones and brought it home. He claimed that ever since, he could feel the weight of the crime he did in his heart. He kept the stones for 14 years before deciding that his conscience couldn't take it anymore. He claimed that since he stole the artifact, he felt like something was watching him, and so he returned the artifact and advised everyone else to do the same. The authorities accepted the artifact back immediately. They claimed that rather than shaming the man for the crime he committed more than a decade ago, they would show others that it's never too late to return something stolen. After all, the ballista stones weren't the only artifacts taken from Israel. Before we go on, like this video, smash the subscribe button, and click the notification bell right now. Number 14. Oldest complaint tablet in the world. This tablet is only 11.6 centimeters high, 5 centimeters wide, and about 3 centimeters thick. This is a clay tablet from ancient Babylon. And believe it or not, this is the very first customer service complaint ever discovered. Yep, you heard that right. This stone tablet from 4,000 years ago is the earliest bad review ever written. In 1750 BC, a copper merchant named Nani created this stone and wrote his dissatisfaction in cuneiform. The tablet, which is now displayed in the British Museum, describes Nani's anger and dissatisfaction with the quality assurance and service of Nasir. Nani wrote on the stone tablet that he was promised high-quality copper ingots, but instead, they were given low-quality ones. He claimed he sent his personal assistants to Nasir fine copper to ask for a refund for a failed service. But instead of fulfilling their end of the deal, his personal assistants were sent home empty-handed, and they were even forced to walk through a war zone. This shows that as early as 4,000 years ago, customers valued their deals with merchants. Today, however, it's easier to file a complaint and leave a bad review. Luckily, we don't need to express our dissatisfaction by writing on a clay tablet. Number 13. The creepy remains of a vampire. Do you believe in vampires? I'm not talking about the fictional vampires who sparkle when the sunlight hits them. I'm talking about the terrifying blood-sucking monsters in horror stories. If people in the 17th century saw how we depict vampires in movies and fictional stories, they might think we're weird. Today, most vampires are portrayed as good-looking, charming creatures with superhuman powers. In the 17th century, however, vampires were the undead. They were people who were already buried and came to life once again. Because of how horrifying they were, people in the 17th century made sure to prevent the dead from rising once again. For instance, take a look at this horrifying grave discovered by archaeologists while digging in Eastern Europe. A rusted sickle was placed across a woman's neck with its sharp end facing down. This ensured that if she dared to rise, her neck would be sliced. In the 17th century, these graves became popular across Poland in response to a vampire outbreak. There are other practices done by people across the continent. Some chose to smash the legs of the deceased before burying them, while some put stones in the mouths of the corpses to make sure they would never be able to bite a human being. Number 12. Sewer filled with babies. The Roman Empire is recognized by many as the greatest society ever to exist. They once conquered a lot of land all across Europe, and they defeated some of the most powerful civilizations of their time. They were also known as the most sophisticated and advanced empires in antiquity. Many of the artifacts and buildings they left behind still fascinate and amaze people from all around the world. But it's also widely known that they had strange and bizarre practices. One of these practices was revealed when archaeologists discovered the remains of more than 100 infants underneath a Roman bathhouse in Israel. Archaeologists thought they merely stumbled upon a pile of chicken bones because of how small the bones were. But after a closer look, they realized the chilling truth. In the past, the Romans thoughtlessly disposed of infants. It sounds incredibly heartless to us today, but in the past, it was a way to control the population. Fortunately, we don't engage in this brutal practice anymore. Number 11. World's oldest heart. In 2022, researchers discovered the oldest heart in the world. The organ is allegedly more than 380 million years old, and it was discovered inside the fossilized remains of a prehistoric fish. The creature is known as the gogo. These prehistoric fish were among the first creatures to develop jaws and teeth. They lived on our planet's oceans more than 100 million years before the first ever dinosaurs existed. According to scientists, the organ discovered in the fish was more advanced than they expected. They believed that the organ made it possible for the fish to rise to the ranks as a fast-moving predator. Number 10. Megacomet heading toward our solar system. Let's take a break from archaeological discoveries and look at a pretty horrifying space discovery. Did you know that a megacomet is heading toward our solar system? Now, you don't need to be alarmed just yet. Astronomers from the University of Pennsylvania spotted the megacomet. The massive celestial body is estimated to be about 200 kilometers wide. The megacomet will most likely come near our planet. Astronomers believe that around 2031, the megacomet will be at its closest position to Earth. But is there a reason for us to be worried? Well, the good news is this comet will most likely just pass by our planet. In fact, you might not even notice that a massive interstellar object has entered our solar system. But hey, we won't know what might happen in the future. Number 9. The mummy who opens her eyes. If I ask you to guess where the most well-preserved mummy is located, you'd probably say that it's in Egypt. Many people are surprised to learn that the most well-preserved mummy isn't from ancient Egypt, but from Europe. In an obscure catacomb in Sicily is the body of a young girl who looks as if she's merely sleeping. She is Rosalia Lombardo, who died of the Spanish flu in 1920. Rosalia was only 1 year old when she died. She died a week before her second birthday, and her death was so heartbreaking that her father couldn't accept that his little angel was gone. To preserve what was left of her, Rosalia's father asked a taxidermist to preserve his child. A renowned Sicilian professor and embalmer named Alfredo Salapia accepted the task and mummified the remains of the 1-year-old girl at her father's request. Amazingly, the process preserved the body of Rosalia incredibly well, so much so that the young girl still looks as if she could wake up at any moment, more than a century after her death. In fact, for over a century, the mummy of Rosalia has captivated Europe. The story goes that if you look at her remains at the right time, you might be able to see her blink. Of course, it's more likely that the motion is an illusion, but because of how well preserved her body is, it isn't difficult to believe that the corpse can still move. Number 8. Empty sarcophagus. Recently, scientists in Australia were surprised when they discovered the remains of a mummy in a coffin they initially thought was empty. The sarcophagus was stored in a university museum in Sydney for over 150 years. Initially, it was classified as an empty sarcophagus, and no one paid much attention to it. Little did they know that a mummy was interred inside. It just so happened that after 150 years, scientists decided that it was time to inspect the interior of the sarcophagus. Needless to say, they were floored when they found human feet and bones inside. The sarcophagus was retrieved from Egypt around 1860 by the museum's founder. Since then, the sarcophagus has been kept safe. Unfortunately, the mummy inside the sarcophagus wasn't preserved well, making it difficult for experts to identify. However, the hieroglyphics on the coffin indicate that the coffin was built around 600 BC and belonged to a woman who was once a priestess or a worshiper when she was still alive. Resin fragments, bandages, and an old funeral shawl were also discovered. Scientists hope that with the use of modern technology, they'll be able to reconstruct the remains inside the coffin and learn how to properly preserve mummies in the future. Number 7. The mysterious moa of Mount Owen. A team of archaeologists exploring the cave systems of Mount Owen in New Zealand was stunned when they unearthed a massive claw. Initially, the archaeologists thought that what they were looking at were the remains of a mangled animal. However, they couldn't figure out what kind of animal left the claw behind. They retrieved the massive claw and took it to the laboratory to examine it further, and they were astounded by what they had learned. The massive claw they discovered belonged to a bird that lived 3,300 years ago. It was incredible because the muscle and skin tissue on the claw was still intact. It turned out that the giant claw belonged to a moa, an extinct bird that most likely originated around 80 million years ago. These birds varied in size, with some as small as a turkey and others as big as an ostrich. The largest of them stood at a height of about 12 feet and weighed up to a staggering 510 pounds. They roamed our planet when there was only one continent on Earth called Gondwana. They survived until several centuries ago, but they quickly became extinct when humans arrived in New Zealand. Number 6. The haunted Bassano vase. In the past centuries, giving intricate and expensive vases was a widespread custom for wealthy people across Europe. In the 12th century, Duchess Eleanor of Aquitaine gave her soon-to-be husband, King Louis VII, a beautiful vase. The Bassano vase of Italy is among the many vessels that were given as marriage gifts. Unlike most vases made to be gifts, the Bassano vase was incredibly simple. It had no intricate markings or beautiful designs. Instead, the story goes that it was imbued with a deadly curse. According to legend, the woman who received the Bassano vase was said to be married in the 15th century. She lived in a village close to Napoli, Italy. On her wedding day, the woman kept the vase in her room, but she never returned to the event. Her husband-to-be searched for her everywhere, and in the end, she was discovered inside her room, lying lifelessly on the ground. What's strange is that she was hugging the vase. After her funeral, the Bassano vase was given to one of her family members, who also mysteriously died. Initially believing it was mere coincidence, the Bassano vase was given to one of their family members, who also died of unknown causes. After several members of the family died, they began seeing a pattern. Anyone who kept the Bassano vase perished. After reaching out to a priest for guidance, they learned that someone with ill intentions had gifted the vase. They were instructed to bury the Bassano vase in sacred grounds, and it wasn't until 1988 that someone discovered the vase once again. It claimed the lives of several other people before it was buried in an unknown grave. So if you ever discover a plain-looking vase, be careful, because it might be the deadly Bassano vase. Number 5. The Siberian Ice Maiden. In 1993, a Russian archaeologist named Natalia and her team excavated a tomb near the Okok Plateau in the Altai Mountains between Russia and China. There, they discovered the remains of an ice princess. With the way the woman's body was preserved, it was clear that she was of high status. She was carefully embalmed using peat, and the preservation of her body was so incredible that even her tattoos were carefully preserved. 6 horses surrounded her body in full harnesses, and she was encased in a wooden coffin made of larch wood. Inside the coffin, the woman was lying on her side, almost as if she was sleeping. The woman stood at around 5 feet 4 inches while alive. She had incredibly pale skin covered with tattoos depicting animal forms and other tribal designs. There was no doubt that the young lady interred in the tomb was a valued member of an ancient society. She was dressed in a long wool skirt and felt stockings. She also donned a 35-inch tall headdress, something that was reserved only for the elite individuals a long time ago. Archaeologists believe that the woman was a princess who belonged to the Paziak culture, a Scythian nomadic tribe that lived in the Altai Mountains from the 6th to 3rd centuries BC. However, later research revealed that she wasn't a princess after all. It was more likely that the woman belonged to a wealthy family. Although this was the case, she's still recognized today as the Ice Princess. The cause of her death is still unknown, but researchers suspect she may have died due to breast cancer. To this day, the Siberian Ice Maiden is still shrouded in mystery. Number 4. Tomb of Sunken Skulls. Archaeologists excavating a dry prehistoric lakebed in Motala, Sweden were very surprised when they unearthed one of the most horrific archaeological discoveries in history, the Tomb of the Sunken Skulls. Beneath the ground were the remains of more than 10 individuals who died more than 8,000 years ago. The bone fragments discovered around the area belonged to men, women, children, and even infants. Almost all of the remains showed signs of trauma and injuries. What's more perplexing is that all the adult skulls were jawless. Thanks to modern technology, scientists were able to reconstruct the face of one of the skulls discovered on the site. By obtaining its genetic information, they discovered that one of the men had blue eyes, brown hair, and pale skin, pretty much similar to people living in Europe. It was an amazing discovery, but one question remains. What happened to the people discovered in the pile? Were they killed during an ambush? Or were they deliberately disposed of in such a careless manner? With the way the skulls were discovered, their bodies were likely thrown into the pit after a ritual. It is possible that the people buried at the site were merely sacrifices in the past. Number 3. Massive Black Sarcophagus. You've probably heard about the massive black sarcophagus discovered in Alexandria, Egypt. The sarcophagus weighed a staggering 30 tons, and it was made of black granite. It was the most enormous stone coffin ever discovered on site. It was only expected that the 8.5 by 5 foot tomb would garner the entire world's attention. Upon announcing the discovery, people from all around the world immediately began creating their own theories as to what lay inside the black sarcophagus. Some claimed that the black sarcophagus held the long-lost remains of Queen Cleopatra, while some believed the sarcophagus held the body of an unknown royal. Many anticipated the sarcophagus opening, but it wasn't until months later that the black stone coffin was actually opened. Initially, many people were against the decision to open the sarcophagus. Many believed that doing so would unleash a deadly curse on the rest of the world. Spoiler alert, it was opened, and nothing happened. Inside the sarcophagus were the remains of 3 people and red sewage. A bit anticlimactic, but several people around the scene thought otherwise. Several locals believed they would somehow obtain power by drinking the red, revolting sewage water inside the sarcophagus. Of course, experts vehemently denied their request. Who knows what microorganisms lived in the dirty water? Archaeologists immediately examined the remains inside the sarcophagus. One of them belonged to a woman, while the other 2 were men. The relationship between the 3 was unclear, but all 3 likely belonged to a single clan. Number 2. Oldest chemical warfare. They say all is fair in love and war. Fighters, soldiers, and warriors are expected to uphold their pride, but there are instances where they will use underhanded tricks to win the battle. Since antiquity, humankind has been waging wars against each other for territory or glory in the past. People used brute strength and weapons to overpower their enemies. But at some point, people began thinking differently. That's when chemical warfare came to be. It's pretty simple. Why would you deploy soldiers when you can simply drop a lethal concoction to end your enemies? It's unclear when people first used chemical warfare, but a recent discovery might shed light on this mystery. In a small subterranean cavern in a fort in the Middle East, archaeologists discovered what could be the earliest evidence of chemical warfare. Beneath the cramped cave were the remains of 20 Roman soldiers. Around 256 AD, a violent siege happened in the fort. There aren't any historical records about the bloody battle, but the archaeological discovery was enough to confirm that the battle indeed ensued. The Roman soldiers were still covered in armor, but they seemed to have died almost instantaneously, leaving archaeologists wondering how the horrific battle unfolded. Upon inspecting the bodies, researchers discovered that the Persians used chemical warfare to win the battle. It turned out that the Persians used sulfur dioxide to end the lives of the Romans. It was a very strategic move. The Romans used tunnels to conquer the land of the Persians, and knowing this, they utilized chemicals and gassed the Roman soldiers, horrifically killing them. And now it's time for today's topic. This discovery will give you nightmares. If the idea of creatures from another planet invading us terrifies you, then you might need to brace yourself. In this photo, you can see several strange creatures strapped on beds in what looks like a research facility. The exact source of this photograph is unknown, but it's being reposted on online forums and conspiracy theories are popping up left and right. One of the most popular theories is that this photo was taken in Area 51. Ever since the early 2000s, the military facility has spawned countless conspiracy theories, from believable to downright crazy. Area 51 is a U.S. Air Force military installation located at Groom Lake in southern Nevada. Formally, there isn't anything else going on in the facility besides flight tests. However, many believe the government is conducting secret research and studies on extraterrestrial creatures. Many believe that the government is hiding aliens in the facility. Of course, many people dispute these bizarre claims, but because of how secretive Area 51 is, it's hard to quell theories like this. Do you think the government is hiding aliens in Area 51? Do you have any other crazy theories about the secretive military facility? As always, comment down below with the hashtag today's topic and let us know your opinion about what we just showed on screen. With that said, let's keep things moving. Number 1. Alien attacks. One sunny day, Robert Taylor parked his truck near a trail in West Lothian, Scotland. It was a good day to go for a walk, and along with his dog, Robert immersed himself in the peaceful surroundings. The two were nearing the side of a hill when he suddenly heard something above him. It was the sound of an aircraft hovering above him. When he looked up, he was surprised to see what he described as a massive flying dome about 20 feet in diameter. It looked just like the flying saucers you see in alien movies. Robert stood in front of the object hovering above the forest floor for several seconds. He stood mesmerized, and suddenly, small spheres appeared around the aircraft. The next thing he knew, he was being dragged toward the flying saucer. He claimed that the last thing he saw was the gray object, and he remembers smelling the foul odor of burning rubber. When he roused what seemed like hours later, the flying object he saw was nowhere to be found. He returned to his truck and went home with several gashes and minor wounds across his body. When the police arrived at the scene the next day, they saw ladder-shaped marks on the ground. Today, many believe that aliens attacked Robert, but some also believe that he merely had a mini-stroke. It's also possible that he suffered from temporal lobe epilepsy, which prompted him to see things that didn't exist. To this day, Robert's bizarre story is still being talked about by many. This isn't the first time someone claimed they were attacked by aliens. For years, 50-year-old Gornji has been fighting aliens, who he claims keep attacking him by sending space rocks to his house. The first incident occurred in 2007 when he discovered a meteorite on his property. Over the next few years, 5 more meteorites struck his house. He claimed there wasn't any other explanation for the bizarre situation except that aliens were targeting him. Researchers from Belgrade University confirmed the authenticity of the meteorites. Even the team of experts was mystified by the 6 incidents. The group claimed that it was almost impossible for someone's house to be the landing site of a meteorite not once, not twice, but 6 times. As a precaution, Gornji reinforced his roof with steel. While he was perplexed as to why aliens were targeting him, he claimed that he treasures the meteorites and even plans to erect a small museum in his backyard to showcase the rocks from outer space. So did you get spooked by any of these discoveries? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Also, check out our other cool stuff showing up on the screen right now, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, everybody.